Now the last variation for the rail fence that I want to show you is what I'm going to call mitered rail fence. There's probably another name for this block. I think it might possibly could maybe sort of maybe be a like half log cabin, but the way that the block came about in my studio, it came from a rail fence and I made a mitered corner. So I decided to call it a mitered rail fence. So this is the one that kind of started it. So these are leftover blocks from the original scrappy rail fence that I showed you. In the scrappy rail fence, I just did lots of different colors and put them together in rail fence fashion, and then did the applique on top of it. And that is all available as a pattern. So I had the leftover blocks and I'm like, well, now what do I want to do? I've got too many leftover blocks in my world. So I wanted to make something with it. So I decided to take those blocks and create this mitered. So if I put this right here in the middle, you can see that that is the block. So it is a mitered block. I then, just to make it better, because everything is better when it's on point, I added the setting triangles, corner triangles, and then so far I've quilted it with this really, really heavyweight thread that I think is really effective. I love it. And I'm getting close to getting the binding done. So this one might be done in the nearest future. So the pattern, though, that is going to be available will be this one. So this is the mitered rail fence that we're going to work on today. So for this, I used a jelly roll. I had a black and white jelly roll, and you can tell that because it's got the zigzag cuts on it. Just used a jelly roll. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of obsessed with jelly rolls. And it just easy. Everything, all the assortment of fabrics are right there in a jelly roll. So I just took that jelly roll and started sewing them together in the black and white fashion. Because they are black and white, I actually did not press them all to one direction like I did in the previous one. I pressed them to the dark fabric so that it's maybe not as noticeable. So that's what we're going to proceed to do with this. So on this quilt, when you see it as the whole picture, here it is. I did it on EQ, so the electric quilt program, that's the designing program I use. And I played with the layout, different ways of doing it. I love the way that this gets this kind of spiralness to it using the mitered rails. And then I also played with the different colors. That is one of the coolest features about using the electric quilt program is after you get your layout done, you can play with colors. What color will my sashing be? What color will my border be? It just makes it an easier way for you to help make those decisions. So the quilt center is done. I do not have the borders done. I do plan to do a piano key border. But when you make the mitered rail fence, I want you to know that you will end up with opposites. You will end up with, if I move this out of the way, you can maybe see it better. Oh my goodness, my studio is so messy. All right, you'll end up with one that has black on the right and white on the left. And oh my goodness, I might not have any, and you'll end up with an opposite. So let's go with that. In the process, you're going to see it. So you'll end up with one that's like this and one that is in the opposite direction. Just know that depending on the layout you decide, you might, like me, end up with more leftovers that are all the same. So in order for me, if I'd wanted to make this bigger, I would have to make more mitered blocks so that I would have some that were in the opposite orientation. Next, we're going to make that mitered rail fence. So my strips are all set. That black and white strips are all set. Now I'm going to cut them into some segments to sew them together in the miter. So the first thing I need to do is cut the squares, and it would only make sense if I cut two at a time. So I'm going to take this and fold it in half. I'm going to measure what size the strip set is. So right now the strip set is 8 3/4 inches. Gonna try and line it up on a seam line. So right here, lining that line up on the seam line so that things are rather square-ish. Trim it off on one end. Spin it or the mat around. And now 8 3/4 inches is going to make it square. So lining it up here on the outside of that pink line, 8 3/4. And as long as I'm here, I might as well cut 2. 8 3/4. This little bit I'm saving for the piano key border that I intend to put on this quilt. You're going to love it when it's done. Just don't hold your breath, okay? All right, so now I have all these squares cut, and now I need to lay them down to be mitered. And the idea, remember that we have pressed the seams to the black fabric so that when we alternate them, so that it goes this way, is that right? So we will get black on one side and white on the other side. When we alternate them, the seams are going to butt. So if you look at it this way, this seam is pressed to the left, this seam is pressed to the right. Those seams will butt right together. So I will put them right there and add a pin. Right? Just because as long, especially with these high contrast fabrics of black and white, you need these to be really well snuggled together. Otherwise, it's going to be noticeable. Okay, everything feels really snuggled together. Now I'm going to draw my line. So I'm going to get my longer ruler, and there, now I'm back. So I'm going to lay my ruler down right here, and I'm going to draw a diagonal line right down the middle. Now the problem I'm going to have here is that I'm not going to very easily be able to see the black on the black, so you could actually use 2 markers, use a white marker and a black marker depending on what colors you have. I'm going to put another pin right here on the seam itself, so I know that it's staying right where it should be. And I can feel it that they're laying right in place. I'm going to take these extra guys out now. Oops. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine and sew with my scant 1/4 inch on either side. Now my machine is set up. I've got my little leader on there, especially if ever I'm going to be starting sewing with these points. And I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away from the drawn line. So I have moved my needle from the center over. And continue, lift the presser foot, and now sew 1/4 inch from that sewn line. As I'm going, oops, I'm a little bit caught up there. I don't know what on. I can fix anything. Oh, there it is. I know what that was. Okay. As I'm sewing, I'm also going to be conscious that I can feel that those seams are going in the right direction. Now when I get to the end of this, if I had another block prepared, I would just chain piece and I would just do one after another after another. But since I don't, I'm going to use my leader. Sew onto my leader or ender or leader ender, depending on what you want to call him. And now I can continue to sew on the opposite side now. And again, grab my little ender guy. Now bring him to the ironing board, and I'm going to give him a quick flat press before I cut him. There we go. Now I'm going to cut on the drawn line. So here's my cut. And now I have 2 blocks that are mitered. Here's this perfect little miter. So to press him, I'm going to press him flat and flip him up. And I do the same with the other, but you want to notice that you will get opposites. You'll get one with the black on one side and one with it on the other side. Now, if you do your blocks either all scrappy or if they're very planned, then you could make this both be black, these both be white, these both be black. That would be up to you depending on either the jelly roll or the fabric collection you're using. So now you see that you get one with the black on one side and then on the other. So keep that in mind depending on the design you're going to be playing with, that you'll need more than one of the other. Okay, so now we're going to square them up. And you want to get quite a few of them sewn first so that you know what size they're going to be squared. And it is so important when you square these up that you're using a ruler that is a square ruler with the diagonal line that goes right down the middle. So I'm going to square these all up to 8 inches. Going to line it up so that diagonal line is right in the middle. Trim the right hand side in the top, flip it around. Now I'm going to tuck it into the 8 inches. Also, again, being very cautious that the diagonal line stays right on that center diagonal line. That is the block. So putting it together is really up to you. There's so many different ways. The pattern that we have available is going to show you how to put those together in the on-point setting. And with the 2 different colors like this, it kind of gives it a ribbon effect. So I would call it a ribboned mitered rail fence. Just add more words to it and it sounds fancier and fancier. In just a minute, we're going to talk to you about how to finish up all of these different quilts. So here's just a little bit of a final review of all the rail fence options that we've taught. This is the traditional rail fence. This is beautiful. It's going to be a great little baby quilt sometime. I did finish it off with just 2 simple borders with some cornerstones. So that's your traditional rail fence. This is the mitered rail fence. This is the one that is on point. Oops, let's fix that. On point here, and I do have all those scrappy little pieces that I will add a piano key border to that one. I don't think I'll add anything else to that after it's done. Here's the one using the leftover scraps of the next quilt that I'll show you, done in mitered corners, on point, and then just straight line quilting. You don't have to do free motion quilting on things. I did just straight lines on this. And this has a fun flannel back, so that's going to be a great little baby quilt. This is the one that was a traditional rail fence, just using those a jelly roll from the Tim Holtz Eclectic Elements collection of fabric, and I added the gears. Now I want you to keep watching on the On Point website. I'm going to do a tutorial on how I did these gears in all of these sizes using my Brother Scan and Cut cutting machine. Made one gear and was able to create all of these different sizes, and that gave it that steampunky kind of look that is very popular in the Tim Holtz fabric line. On this final one, this little skinny border, you can find that as a tutorial, and Now or Never tutorial on the On Point TV YouTube channel on how to create that little 1/4 inch extra little border there. So keep a watch out for that. But this quilt is the one that started it, and it was all scrappy rails, just lots of scrappy fabrics going throughout with a lot of applique. So the applique is done in an applique quilting technique. And again, keep watching the On Point the On Point YouTube channel, because I'm going to show you the different techniques that I used for this. Some of this was done just freehand cut. Some of this has no fusible on it at all. I just used the glue stick. Some of this was steam-a-seam. Some of this was with the Brother Scan and Cut. Some of these were cut with my Sizzix Big Shot. So there's many different ways that you can cut with your applique. So this pattern in the black and white quilt, Those patterns are both available as one purchase on the On Point website. So go to onpoint-tv. Now, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm thinking if you've gone this far into the video, you might have actually liked it. So please subscribe to our channel. And on top of subscribing to the channel, there is a little bell that's down in the bottom corner, I think maybe around here or maybe around here, but somewhere on the bottom of the screen that you're looking at right now is a bell. That is the notifications. You need to actually push that if you want to get further notifications. We try to put one video out a week, and if you'd be interested in seeing those videos, that's a way for you to know that there's a video out there or that we're doing a YouTube live so that you won't miss a thing. So if you have any questions, you can contact me at quiltingwithnancy.com. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel. I try to get back to you as quick as I can. And if you have any burning question about how to do a certain technique, be sure to ask me a question there, and I could do that as a video answering your question. So thank you very much for watching this series, and I will talk to you soon.